Welcome. We're glad that you're able to be with us here today for our webinar on investing in your marriage with Dr. Ary Christofidis. Before we get started and we talk with Dr. Christofidis, there was a few housekeeping notes I want to go over. For those of you that have been on before, you know the routine. But basically, this is being recorded. So if you have children interrupt you as you're watching, it will be up in about a week, and you'll be able to sit down and watch it again. And it'll be available indefinitely online. So if you like us on Facebook or if you're on our listserv, you will be notified when it does get posted so that you know when you can access it. We also are always greatly indebted to Leadership 100 and faithful stewards like yourself who continue to support our ministry and help us to provide programs like this to the faithful of our archdiocese and to Orthodox Christians throughout the country and even throughout the world. We've had people tune into these from across the seas. So thank you for being with us today. I want to take a minute and introduce Dr. Christofidis with you. Dr. Christofidis is a licensed clinical psychologist. He sees people who are struggling with depression, anxiety, marital conflict, and family discord. His approach in working with clients includes elements of cognitive behavioral, psychodynamic, and family systems therapies. The foundation of his approach to therapy comes from his 3 years of study at Hellenic College Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology and the teachings of the Orthodox Christian Church. Dr. Christofidis received 2 graduate degrees from the University of Pittsburgh, a master's in clinical social work and a PhD in counseling psychology. We've had the benefit of working with Dr. Christofidis over the past few years. He's presented at some of our conferences and always a pleasure to listen to. Dr. Christofidis, welcome, and I'll let you take over from here.
Thank you, Melissa. Christ is risen. Let me get my screen set up here so we can move forward with our seminar today. I need to do the share screen first. Hit that button, and then we can begin. Okay, I think we're good. Okay. So the title of my presentation today is Investing in Your Marriage. I want to apologize ahead of time. This is my first time doing a webinar, so I hope my voice is clear enough and loud enough for you. I chose this topic because I feel one of the things that strikes me the most when I do couples counseling is the lack of time that a husband and wife put into their marriage. And when they come and talk to me about their problems, they often talk about reasons that they feel that they aren't getting along, communication, of course, being one of the classic ones. But what I often don't hear enough of is that they are not putting time into their marriage, investing real time. So when we invest, as you can see on your screen there, in something, we typically know it will take time to reap the benefits. And in couples counseling, what I typically come across is people will say, we've been struggling for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And when I begin to work with them and talk about their history, I often get some couples that are a little bit anxious, and they say, well, Ary, how long is this going to take to do couples counseling? You know, I know it's not going to take a couple weeks, a couple months maybe, and they try to get a sense of how much time they need to put into doing some couples counseling. And what's ironic is I will say to them, well, how many years have you been struggling in your marriage? And again, they may say 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. And I say, well, it's going to take some time and some investment into turning this around. But people are often very impatient when it comes to that. So I have some quotes, some of my slides here that I'm going to share with you. It's a mixture of some research that's been done that I think it will be enlightening, some common themes that I've seen in my work with couples over the years. I've been doing couples counseling now for over 20 years, and I've heard just about everything that couples go through. And so I will give you some examples of things that I've come across in my work with couples. And towards the end of our time together, I'm going to be sharing also some quotes with you from some of the church fathers, the saints, and some beautiful things that our faith actually teaches us that could absolutely help a couple in their marriage. But let's begin actually with one of the ones that's my favorite. And I think Elder Philotheos Zervakos, he captures the problem that we see in modern society today. I'd like to read it to you. He says, everybody in the whole world wants to become happy, both young and old, men and women, and even young boys and girls from a small age. And still, when they reach maturity, think about how to become rich, how to become happy in their temporal life. Most people believe that happiness is being wealthy. They think that whoever acquires wealth is truly happy. And as a result of this, almost everybody strives to acquire temporal, earthly wealth. They wear themselves out. They toil, they travel abroad, and they suffer hardships day and night to acquire corruptible wealth, material and temporal wealth, which does not render the people who acquire it happy, but unhappy many times. This is the reason why our Lord Jesus Christ says in the Holy Gospel, quote, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Matthew 6:19 through 21. One of the reasons I like this quote from Elder Zervakos is because I've had plenty of clients who have been millionaires, very rich, very successful financially, but their home life and their marriage has been in ruins. And it's very telling that money does not buy happiness. I know everyone's heard that before, but it is absolutely true. The other piece of this quote, though, that is really striking is that husbands and wives do wear themselves out. Many of them work very long hours. And the point that you often hear is because they want to live a more comfortable life and also to provide for their children a nice lifestyle. But what they're doing is they're working so much that their focus is too much on acquiring these things that Elder Zervakos talks about. I've had people who have been retired say to me, Ary, I really missed the boat. I worked way too hard and I spent very little time with my children, and I deeply regret it. So this is not against hard work, but the focus here is, are we balancing work with family life and time with our spouses? I have had many couples who have had, we call it empty nest. Their children have grown up and they come into therapy saying, I don't know my wife, I don't know my husband, we don't know each other anymore. And all the children are grown up and gone, and we struggle. And when you look into what has happened over the years as they were raising the children, is they did not put their marriage first. They allowed all these other issues, including the blessing of children and parents, grandparents, to come in, and it, as they say, it dries up that relationship. So we have to put our priorities straight, as it says in the Holy Scripture. We have to focus on, in the marriage ceremony, nothing should come between a husband and wife. Nothing. And so we often have this very common problem, which is everyone's so busy working, raising the kids, but what happens to the marriage? So let's move forward here. So here are some common reasons couples face difficulties in their marriage: work, career, chores at home, kids' schedules, and there are many other issues and reasons. And what I challenge couples to do is to really reevaluate all of these very common reasons that families are struggling. One of the things I enjoy is when I see a couple in the summertime before they start to schedule their new academic year for their kids who are in school. They'll say to me, we're barely swimming above water. We are so stressed out, and too many things are happening, and it's chaos. And I will challenge them. I will say to them, well, let's review what you're doing. We'll look at the extra jobs. We'll look at the kids' schedules. And oftentimes what's happening is, as many of you may know, mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, are basically being taxi drivers to their kids with all of their schedules. And so I will happily challenge a couple to say, are you willing to omit and stop filling up your schedules with 2 or 3 activities for each of your children? And because I will ask them, and they'll say their son has 2 or 3, their daughter has 2 or 3, their third child may have 1 or 2. And all of a sudden, the family is no longer a unit, but it's split apart. And husbands and wives aren't together watching their children. They're each separate, one taking one child to this event, the other to another event. And so I think it's very important to reevaluate what is the important, what's important in their lives. Children have said to me without their parents around that they just want to be around mom and dad. And they don't, of course, the teenagers like to be with their peers, but the younger children will often say, I just want to be with the family. And many of these kids are wanting to please their mother and father and will do a lot of these activities, but because it's what mom and dad want. And we have to rethink sometimes what is the purpose. Many parents will say it's to make sure that my child has a well-rounded application to get to a good college. But are we missing all of those formative years time with our kids? And again, what are the effects on the marriage? So this slide, this information I'm sharing is to challenge you out there, however many years you've been together, to reevaluate things. When I put down work and career, it's really important, I think, for a husband and wife to check in with each other and decide, how are things going? Do you need a second or third job to make ends meet? Do both mom and dad have to work full time? I think these are important questions to ask to decide what's important in your family life. All right, let's move to the next one. So here are some big dilemmas that I've been seeing over the last 10 years. I mean, these things have been happening longer than that, but these are some real problem areas in marriage. And what I'm seeing here is that a spouse, it could be the wife or the husband, they're investing that time in internet pornography. They're spending that extra time on Facebook or Instagram or any of the social media apps. And the thing that has been most disturbing to me as a couples therapist is that the husband and wife are using more and more text messaging versus communication face-to-face. They're not taking time to sit down at home together, sit on the couch at the kitchen table, and communicate the important things face-to-face. They're not investing that time. Instead, because they're quote-unquote so busy, they're using text messaging just to communicate. And I think this is very dangerous, because what happens that I've seen is that, like the computer, the smartphones today, it's a way of kind of protecting sometimes yourself from having to see someone face to face. And what I've been observing is that a husband or wife will be a little bit more bold, a little bit more insensitive in sending sometimes nasty messages, inappropriate messages to their spouse because it's through text. And I would guess that if they had to see their spouse face to face, they wouldn't necessarily be using those kind of words to their spouse if they had to sit across from them. So I'm very concerned about the use of text messaging as the more common way of communicating with your spouse. I think it's unhealthy. Now, if it's to say, honey, I'm running late, I'm stuck in traffic, did you pick up the kids? or even a beautiful, like, I love you, I miss you, can't wait to see you after work. Okay, but not these long, drawn-out texts. I think that's something that is unhealthy for a marriage. And of course, I have down here marijuana, alcohol, prescription drugs. There are still too many adults who are addicted to these things, and it's causing, and I'm sorry to say, wreaking havoc on the marriage when one of the spouses is struggling with an addiction and is unwilling for the sake of the marriage, for the sake of the family, to do something about it to get help. And don't sweep it under the rug. A lot of spouses who are on the other side of this are afraid to reach out and get help. And I would encourage you, if you have a spouse who is struggling with one of these things, to seek out some help from your priest, professional counselor, preferably a Christian counselor, because things need to be addressed. As I put on the bottom of this PowerPoint slide here, unhealthy coping strategies. So what are some of the unhealthy coping strategies? Well, we just oftentimes couple lead to arguments and just fighting, verbal confrontation, but actually doing nothing different. So we need to be able to have some sense of humility and seek out help versus trying to do it all on our own. All right, let's continue. One of my favorite pieces of research came from John Gottman. He's a renowned couples therapist. And what he did is, back before cell phones, he had this research where he looked at couples who had, on average, 8 exchanges with their spouse per day. This is before texting, before cell phones. And he looked at their interactions. And as you can see on the screen, there were the healthy couples and the hurting couples. So the couples who were really struggling in their marriage, they said that the green, as you can see, the green is positive there. So the unhealthy couples only had 1 positive exchange per day and 7 negative with their spouse. The couples that said in his study, our marriage is okay, we're doing fine, if you notice here, that actually represents 4 and 4. So 4 positive exchanges and 4 negative exchanges. And what is striking to me as a psychologist when I look at this research is the healthy couples are basically saying, I can handle the negativity if I have enough of that positive regard from my spouse. It balances out. I can handle the negativity. It's when you start to go in the wrong direction here. And I've had many spouses, as you can imagine, coming to therapy where their communication is primarily negative. One example I like to share with you is there was a couple that came in, and I just saw the tension in their shoulders and their face, and they were just constantly throwing negative jabs back and forth at each other all day long. And I can't tell a couple what to do. I can only give them suggestions and guidance. It's up to them to follow through. So with this couple, I said to them, I would like you to try between now and next week's session to just say 1 positive thing to your spouse every day, at least one a day. I was pleased. The following week they came in. I noticed they were a little bit more relaxed, not less tense, and they both acknowledged that with just that 1 positive statement from their spouse each day, it broke that unhealthy kind of expectation of, oh, what's my spouse going to say to me today that's negative, and how is she or he going to hurt me this time? It broke that, and they were relaxed because every day they started to feel like, okay, I'm going to hear something nice today, rather than always something negative. And for all of you out there that are listening and observing this, I would challenge you at home, talk to your spouse, and try to talk about saying something genuine and nice to your spouse at least once a day. Try to break some of those unhealthy habits that we do have here. All right, let's continue on. There have been some good studies out there, and this one I wanted to include in today. I think for those of you who like looking at some of the research here, I wanted to share this from Bowling Green State University. They looked at religious life and marriage. And of course, we're we're discussing marriage here in the context of our Orthodox Christian faith. And they said being religious and having similar faith backgrounds benefited couples. Most important, what couples did together in practicing their faith. Couples who actively practiced their faith together and who tended to view marriage as having a transcendent meaning tended to be happier, they experienced less conflict, they worked more as a team, and they engaged in less of the danger signs we see in troubled relationships. And I loved reading about that. There's another study in the same resource, and I'll show you the reference point at the end of this here. Center for Marriage and Family at Creighton University. They compared couples in which partners came from same church background, a different church background, and then a different background, but in which one converted to the religion of the other. And the results were the last group was least likely to divorce, the one where they converted to the religion of the other. And the reason was most of these partners said the greatest motivation for one changing was a mutual desire to worship and practice their faith together as a couple. This is from Fighting for Your Marriage from Markman, Stanley, and Bloomberg, 2001. I'll leave that up for a couple seconds in case you want to write that down. Okay. One of my favorite quotes when it comes to relationships comes from St. Paul's writing in Ephesians 4. And I'd like to quote this to you, read this to you, that you put off concerning your former conduct, the old man which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lusts, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man which was created according to God, in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, putting away lying, let each one of you speak truth with his neighbor. In this case, we could say with his spouse. For we are members of one another. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. Ephesians 4:22 through 27. So you can see how we can take this quote and apply it to marriage. It's very easy. But I want to go a step further. And I'm going to read to you a further explanation of this quote from St. Paul by St. John Chrysostom. It's a very powerful one, and I will integrate for you how I see it connected to the work I do with couples and the problems that I see with couples that actually are struggling to make progress in their marriage. So let me first share with you some quotes from St. John Chrysostom. So he says, and I'm going to be reading from different parts of his homily on Ephesians 4. If we are to attain to the kingdom of heaven, it is not enough to abandon wickedness, but there must be abundant practice of that which is good also. To be delivered indeed from hell, we must abstain from wickedness, but to attain to the kingdom, we must cleave fast to virtue. He goes on to say, for as I was saying, that the departure from evil is sufficient to prevent our falling into hell, whilst I was speaking, there stole upon me a certain awful sentence, which does not merely bring down vengeance on them that dare to commit evil. Now listen what he says here, but which also punishes those who omit, and I want to emphasize, omit any opportunity of doing good. Later on in the homily, he says that they that have done good shall enjoy those good things that are in heaven. But they who, though they have no evil indeed to be charged with, yet have omitted to do good, will be hurried away with them that have done evil into hellfire. So, very powerful words from St. John Chrysostom. Now, I wanted to share that with you because oftentimes what I have found in doing long-term work with couples is sometimes one or even both of the spouses will recognize their wrongdoing to their wife or their husband. They'll see it and they will recognize it and they will stop it. And then that's as far as they go. So what they do is let's say they're having an affair and their spouse catches them and they recognize it and they end the affair. What I will see sometimes is that's as far as the spouse will go. They'll say they're sorry, they cut the affair off, they stop having the affair, but they don't change. They don't, as St. John Chrysostom says, they're not looking to do good, the virtue of doing good, going past just omitting the evil. And I find that is very problematic in many couples that I've seen. They will admit the wrongdoing, but then they will hesitate to make real changes moving forward, good changes, good things that are healthy for the marriage, but not just healthy for the marriage, but healthy for their own soul. So that's one of the reasons that I really love how St. John challenges us with these very deep, intense words and challenges to say, it's not just enough to stop the evil. We must do good. So in marriage, it's taking that extra step. Some of the couples, I should say it this way, many of the couples that have been very successful that I've been blessed to have worked with over the years, these couples do just that. You see them stop pointing the finger at their spouse and their spouse's wrongdoings. They look at themselves and they start to correct not just the wrongdoings, but they start to do good. They listen to what their spouse has taught them about what they're needing and asking for, and they do the good. And when you see spouse and both spouses, when I see them coming into my office and they say, oh, it was so wonderful. I saw my husband do this. I saw my wife do this. It's very inspiring to me. It makes me want to do more. That's what I hear often. It makes me want to work harder. It's that doing good part for your spouse that is really the change agent when it comes to healing a marriage. And again, this is why I think St. John Chrysostom's words are so spot on when it comes to St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians. Okay, let's start to get into a little bit more of the Orthodox mindset here when it comes to marriage. When a man detaches his mind from earth, opens it toward God with a desire to please God, then God reveals his will in various ways. St. Peter of Damascus writes, if a man has full intention to please God, then God teaches him his will either through thoughts, through some other person, or through Holy Scripture, end quote. Such a man becomes attentive, keen, and awaits God's promptings from within and from without. For him, chances cease to exist. The entire world becomes as a 10-stringed harp which does not give out one sound without the finger of God. So one of the reasons I chose to share this quote with you today is because we are struggling often, and I could say distracted by what in these struggling marriages, by the will of our spouse. So whether the husband is fighting within himself because he knows what his wife wants to do, or vice versa, the husband and wife get too distracted by the intention or will of the other, and also by their own will, which can be unhealthy. So with the two of those distractions, it's very hard to see or even listen to what is the will of God. What is the will of God in their salvation, their marriage? And so this challenges us as husbands and wives to listen more to God's will and desire. One of my favorite quotes, I don't have it on the slide here, comes from Saint Porphyrios in the book Wounded by Love. There was a husband that went to him looking for validation because his wife was being very difficult to him and complaining and just being on his case. And the impression is that this man went to St. Porphyrios to just say, wanting the saint to say, oh, you poor man, you have a tough wife and you'll be okay and I'll pray for you. Instead, and I'm quoting the best I can, and I don't remember exactly word for word, but Saint Porphyrius says to him, are you so stupid? The man's shocked. Saint Porphyrius saying, are you so stupid? Are you too dim-witted to see that you've lost opportunities for sanctification? So here's this man going for help to Saint Porphyrius, and he gets slammed with this direct between the eyes hit from Saint Porphyrius to tell him, wait a minute, you're not realizing this. God knows what you need. And what this man needs is some humility. And his wife was giving him opportunities to humble himself, but he was ignoring those opportunities, as St. Porphyrius is telling him. You're missing all these, you've missed, he says, all these opportunities for sanctification, for humility. And so sometimes what I see is in my office is I'll have a spouse look at me like, give me the eyes that they're not the problem, their spouse is the problem. There's a lack of that humility when it comes to change. So if we quiet that down, our will, our desire, our conflict with our spouse, and try to open up more to God's will, we will begin to see what his intentions are for us. Just like St. Porphyrius kind of scolded this husband for being too arrogant and not listening to his wife. Okay, let me move on. This is Elder Thaddeus of Serbia. I love his quote here on inner peace. It says, not opposing evil means preserving one's inner peace. Opposing evil is evil. It involves a desire to return evil for evil, which is what the fallen spirits thrive on. However, when they attack us and find that we do not oppose them, then our peacefulness disarms them and they are defeated. Therefore, we must try to always pray like this, quote, Lord, help me to preserve my inner peace. Teach me how to be calm and peaceful and kind, just like thine angels, end quote. So why am I using this quote here for a discussion on marriage? It's because what happens oftentimes is, in modern psychology terms, we say a spouse gets defensive when being verbally attacked by their other spouse. And what happens is then both spouses get into this place of a lack of peace. Instead, there's anger, animosity, resentment, and very dangerous words being thrown at each other. And what Elder Thaddeus is trying to teach us is to say, don't return evil for evil. Keep your peace. Try to stay calm. And I think this is one of the best things that we should work on in marriage, learning how to stay calm. And even though our spouse may be in a bad place, a bad position, it doesn't mean that we then are justified in yelling back at them. Instead, we don't want to give up that inner peace. We need to maintain it. And it's very hard to do sometimes. One of the things that I've noticed with husbands oftentimes is as soon as their wives start to get angry at them, all the husband wants to do is walk out of the room and not deal with it. They shut down. And that may be their way of saying, I want to stay calm, but they're abandoning their wife in that moment when she needs him to be present and listening, even if she's not in the best place. So maintaining peace doesn't mean running away. It means being able to stay calm in the heat of a moment that may require you to be present versus running away. I think I have to move a little bit faster on my slides here because of the time. St. Paisios, it says elder, but he's been canonized now. I love this quote from him, and I want you to keep it in the context of marriage here. He says, if we work to correct ourselves and look more intently towards our inner activity rather than our external, giving precedence to divine help, we can in turn be of greater and more positive help to others. We will also achieve an inner serenity that will quietly help the souls of the people we encounter, because spiritual serenity reflects the virtue of the soul and transforms souls. When someone applies himself to external activity before having polished his spiritual inner state, he may struggle spiritually, but he will be fraught with worry, anxiety, lack of confidence in God, and frequent loss of serenity. Again, that we're focused too much on the external. And one of the things that I see in this, and I think about with this quote, is when one spouse is focused so much on the other spouse doing all of the work and them not doing any of the work themselves. They're too focused on the other spouse changing, but they're not willing to look internally and change themselves. Let me continue. Again, St. Paisios says, carnal love unites worldly people externally only as long as there are worldly attributes present. And it separates them when these attributes are gone, and in turn drives them to a sense of loss. When there is spiritual, true love between a couple, if one spouse loses his or her worldly attributes, not only will this not separate them, but it will unite them all the more. When only carnal love is present, then, for example, if the wife learns that her partner has looked at another woman, she will angrily throw some vitriol and blind him. Whereas if there is pure and true love, she will have all the more compassion for him and try, in a good way, to lead him to what is right. This is how the grace of God abides in them. It's been a blessing and an honor to work with couples where even after an affair has taken place, that the husband and wife want to save their marriage. And yes, many times they want to save it because they have children. It's still a beautiful thing to see that a spouse can be forgiving, loving, and want to make things right. And what is most beautiful, and I've been blessed to have sit and observe this, is when a spouse will say, after very hard work in therapy and turning to God and being more active in the church and their faith, that their marriage has never been better. It's a beautiful thing to hear. So when we get stronger internally, we can handle better those carnal love, external things that are important to people, such as external beauty, the way one looks, versus looking at the beauty of the soul and the heart. Okay, I need to move a little bit faster here. I've got a few more slides for everybody. Okay, so I want to share with you a couple things here about listening, because there are things that often interfere with one's ability to listen better. So one first comes from facial cues. So for all of you who are married and watching this, I want to challenge you to pay more attention to the muscles in your face and how you present yourself to your spouse. If you think of it this way, if you were to go to dinner tonight and meet Archbishop Demetrius at an event for the church, and you went to meet him and greet him, you would be very cognizant of how you look. You'd be smiling, you'd be pleasant, you'd really present a beautiful presentation to the Archbishop. But when it comes to your husband or your wife, sometimes we kind of let our guards down and we don't always think about the facial cues here. And because you've been together for long enough, your brain says, oh, my wife looks angry. My husband looks sad. My husband looks disappointed. My wife looks happy. That before you even open up your mouth and say something, the brain is already reacting to the face. So if you can try to relax your muscles, pay attention to how you look when you get home from work, when you get home for an event, and you're seeing your spouse for the first time, you can start that moment in a more positive way. Another thing is the tone of voice. And again, because you've been with your spouse even more than just 1 year, your brain has already kind of said, I know that tone and that pitch. If my spouse's tone is here, it's safe. If it's up here, it's going to be dangerous and we're going to have a fight. So you each have already decided when, before the first word completes itself, the ear has picked up on the tone and pitch and it says, danger, danger, fight's going to start. Or it's safe and calm. Pay attention to your tone of voice. Lastly is choice of words. This is something that's very common in our work with couples and something that I always stress. Instead of saying the word you, try to present information in more of a possessive I or we, because depending on how you and your spouse discuss things, when you say you, it can be interpreted as an attack and aggressive. So try to consciously change that and use the word I am struggling, I'm having a problem. Can we do something about this? Versus you upset me, you are the problem. That is never a good way to approach it. Next, I would like to offer this very quick exercise that I think will help couples when it comes to listening. It's a 10-minute listening tool. Person number one brings up one topic. You have 20 seconds to present the one topic, not the laundry list of 5 or 6 things you've been wanting to say to your spouse, just one topic. And instead of saying it for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, try 20 seconds. Try to be very to the point. The second person has to repeat back verbatim what you've said. And then person number one says either, yes, I got it right, or you missed something. Now, why is that important? Well, men and women have different brains. They interpret things differently. And even though you think you heard your spouse say ABC, your brain may be interpreting it as EFG. So you want to make sure you can repeat it back, and then your spouse knows that they've been heard. And it's a wonderful thing when you've been heard by your spouse. So it continues, and once you've said it correctly, person number two gets to respond with their feedback on what they've heard, and they get 20 seconds, and you just repeat this. I try to get the couples I work with to do this at least twice a week, so each of them takes turn of bringing up a topic. It's very healthy, and the couples, and it's not a coincidence, but the couples that actually do this exercise on a regular basis, their communication skills improve dramatically. So, on a side note, the title is Investing in Your Marriage. This exercise is investing 10 minutes twice a week. And when couples come back and they say, oh, Ary, you know what, we didn't have time to do the exercise. Well, I'm not surprised that their communication skills aren't getting better. They're not investing the time. So it's a very small investment for a much greater reward on the other end. So I encourage all of you to do that with your spouses. So I think we're good on the timing here. This is something I'd like to challenge you all on. What is the toughest change you have had to make in yourself that has led to the greatest positive change in your marriage? When I do workshops, I love giving this question out because I always love to hear what couples have to say. Some wonderful things. Let me say it again, though. What is the toughest change for you that you had to make in yourself, but it ended up leading to wonderful positive change in your marriage? And I want you to take that question and contemplate and think about that after the seminar is over. And pose that question to your spouse as well when you see them tonight if they weren't able to participate in this. I think as far as slides are concerned, yep, that's it for the slides. But I can continue. We have some more time. I have a sign here, but it says more. I'm not seeing any Q&As, so I can continue to give some examples that I've seen that I've worked with in common problems, which would require more investment in marriage. Oftentimes, couples will come and they struggle with finances. And it's not ironic that we choose the term investing in your marriage because most people think about investment when it comes to money. And if you were to ask a husband and wife to either invest their income or their savings and in some kind of investment that is shady versus something that would guarantee some level of profit, that's an easy one to answer. But yet when it comes to investing into their relationship, it's not a priority. But let's get back to finances, because finances is one of the big problems that I've seen in marriages. It's very common to have one spouse that is very conservative with spending and the other spouse that is a little bit more liberal with their spending. And it often creates conflict in the relationship. what happened with one of the spouses I worked with was this husband and wife had a side job to make some extra income. And what was happening was the wife was more conservative with how much she wanted to spend on products that they would then turn around and sell for a profit. The husband wanted to spend much more money. And so what happened was that he was going behind her back and purchasing some more expensive items because he felt his justification in this was that he wanted to get a bit greater profit after selling it. But he knew his wife would probably say no to him. So he went behind her back and started purchasing these things. Now, what the wife was noticing is some sneaky behavior by her husband. And this caused her great panic. And one of the great reasons it caused her panic is that earlier in their marriage, there was an affair. And his behavior mimicked some of the behavior he was doing earlier on when he was having an affair. So even though he was not having an affair, he was acting in a way that was causing her to question his behavior. And right away, her mind thought he's having another affair. And so my challenge to him was, here's an example where you need to work things out with your wife, come to a compromise, and work together on this, because your little white lies or little bit behavior is causing such distress in your wife that she thinks you're having another affair. So when it comes to making decisions and it comes to the amount of money, it's very important for a husband and wife to say, if we're going to choose something, let's choose together. It's very common to say, well, why don't you have an amount of money that you are comfortable with? So some wives will spend $300 on a pair of shoes and hide them in the trunk of their car because they're afraid their husband is going to be angry at them for spending $300 on a pair of shoes. And again, if the husband and wife have set some very simple ground rules, then what they can do is say, look, if you find something that you want to purchase, and if it's over $100, then I think we should check in with each other before you spend that amount of money. In the old days, it may have been $10 or $20, but now you can spend $10 at Starbucks. So I think a husband and wife need to decide what it is, the amount that they are comfortable of spending without having to notify their spouse. Another reason for that is because spouses will get credit card statements and they'll start to panic and think that something's going on when their spouse is spending money and they're not aware of it. So if there's a good relationship when it comes to agreeing upon a set amount of money, then be very clear and be very open with your spouse, and you will avoid many, many headaches. I have received a question from a participant asking if there are more exercises for couples that they can use besides the 10-minute exercise. Another one that I think is important, when I talk to couples that have been married for many years, I notice that I'll ask them, when's the last time you went on a date? And they will say, oh my gosh, it's been 9 months, it's been 2 years. And so I challenge them and I say, I would like you to try to go on one date a month, and each month one spouse gets to choose what the date will be. So for the month of May, the husband chooses the date, and what you're going to do in the month of June, the wife will choose. So this is what has happened many times, and this has become a problem sometimes with this exercise. I will give a couple that exercise, and let's say the wife says, okay, I'm going to choose. So I'll be working with this couple for months. All of a sudden, a couple of months will go by, and I will say, oh, how are the date nights coming along? And a wife will look at me with this stern look, and she'll just look at her husband, and all of a sudden the husband's eyes just go like, oh my gosh. And typically what happens is the wife will be very attentive to this exercise. She will go out on a date with her husband, and then she will step back and wait to see if her husband is attentive to this as well. And she won't say anything. Many wives have done this before. And the husband will look so guilty and ashamed because it was his month to choose a date night, and he didn't do it. And right away, the wife says, see, I'm not important in your life. And I did it, but look at you. It's been 2 months, and you haven't even called. You haven't even talked to anybody about setting up a babysitter for us, and it will become a heated discussion. So I challenge the men often. You need to be attentive to this. One last piece about the date night is don't go to a movie, because all the two of you are doing is you're staring at a screen. So let me see. Okay, another question here. We have a few minutes. I will try to answer the best I can. It talks about a wife is asking about how do you connect and communicate with a husband about emotional things. Okay, so I'm sorry, I was just reading the question. So it's very common that husbands struggle to connect at a deeper place emotionally more than wives. But the reality is men have the ability to do this, but many of them, because of lack of practice and for many other issues in their lives, avoid it. And so what I ask wives to do is, number one, try to make it as safe for your husband as possible. So what do I mean by safe? Make the atmosphere safe. And so don't be demanding and saying to your husband, well, I just shared my heart with you, and I expect you to share it right back with me. Or I opened up to you, and I'm being vulnerable, but why won't you be? If you start an argument like that, what's happening is the husband's just going to shut down more and more and more and be afraid. And what I would tell the wives that I work with, I'll say, be patient, but model with your own examples what you want to talk about. And then don't put him on the spot right when you're done. Now you share, because it's just going to take him time to feel comfortable, because many husbands don't know what to say. But by you keep showing and keeping it safe, they can't open up. And I've done this, and then this is what many of wives have shared with me in their efforts. I've said to them, stop with the arguing and the attacking, and if you pull back and stay quiet and keep the space calm, there is a chance that your husband will open up a little bit and feel safer. And in fact, many a times it has worked. So number one, be patient. Don't be demanding. It's not tit for tat. I've opened up, you open up now. Don't put your husband on the spot, but make the atmosphere as safe as possible, and see where you may need to give him a little bit of a nudge rather than attacking him for not opening up. I hope that's helpful. Let me see, what is our time? I only have about 3 or 4 minutes left, I believe. I am not aware if the Orthodox question is, does the Orthodox Church offer financial classes? I'm not aware of that. I don't believe so. I think it depends on diocese or metropolis to metropolis. Sometimes I know of some churches have sent out flyers, and they've brought in people to speak at their churches. So I think it's a church by church, metropolis by metropolis case when it comes to offering classes like that. Usually it's a one-time seminar that I've seen. But that would require, obviously, you staying on top of information that your churches and metropolises share through emails. So I know of one time I remember reading about a financial expert going to a church and offering some financial advice. But other than that, I want to thank you all for being patient with me. I hope I have been able to offer some things from our church, the saints, and from my experience as a couples counselor. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christofidis. That was really wonderful and inspiring. And I'm hoping that those of us that were here today listening, this isn't just kind of the one-time listening thing, that hopefully if you're listening and your spouse isn't with you, you go and listen to it at home with your spouse and start that dialogue. And if you work at a parish or you're a part of a parish, why not have a couples night and show this and have couples discuss some things and everything, so that we can continue to shine the light on how to build healthy marriages, in our communities. So thank you so much. As I said, about a week from now, this will be up for everyone to see on our website. If you like us, forgive me, getting over a cold. If you like us on Facebook or sign up for our listserv by going to our website, family.goarch.org, you'll be notified of this and other webinars we have coming up. So we look forward to seeing you all in the future, and thank you very much for being with us today.
Are we off? Oh. I wanted to say thank you to you guys, but I guess we're off the air.
I think we're still on. Thank you very much.
Well, if we are, I want to thank Melissa, Mari, and Father Cositaras and Presbyter Ary from the Center for Family Care. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you.